you mentioned earlier, but we just got a lot of people that's ill-advised when it comes to stuff like that.
Well, and I think it's a great point that you're bringing up, and having both sides, because it's such a hot button topic. And if you only hear one side, it's easy to skew your perspective, you know, and so you need to hear it from both sides, and I think it's going to be challenging.
Yeah.
But definitely a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah, the reason why I think it would be less challenging if we bring people that have personal experience and they can share from their personal experience, and it makes it a little bit easier for someone else to understand them. Because if you've been through it and you can explain it and you can educate people, I think it makes it easier for people to accept it, people to receive it.
And then, can you tell us a little bit about some of the other topics you'd like to cover in upcoming episodes?
Yeah, I was thinking of teen pregnancy as well. That seems to be a situation that's a little tough out there. A lot of parents are going through a lot of challenges with that. And a lot of kids having kids, you know, before they fully understand even the process of being a woman or being a man. So we definitely want to talk about that as well. And also drugs. We want to talk about that. Heterosexual relationship, we want to talk about that. So everything that can pretty much inform people and educate people, we want to bring it to the forefront and give a voice to people, and they can run with it.
Well, and some of those, the later topics you're discussing, there are things that people a lot of times want to hide in the shadows. You know, let's not talk about it. Let's keep this hidden, and it'll get better miraculously, but that's not the case. And I think it even reminds me of, you know, the first interview we had with Redeem, just talking about, you know, you got to bring these things out so that people can get the help they need and hear the information that could potentially help them in a difficult situation.
Yeah. I like that commercial that said, teach your kids on sex or someone else will. I love that commercial because what it does is they're going to know about the situation regardless whether they hear it from you or not, but when they hear it from you, it's a lot more critical, a lot more credible, because you can educate them the right way.
Yeah.
And they will be a lot safer place for them to hear from the parents. And one of the things also, I led a teen ministry in the Boston area, and had a conversation with one of the parents and communicated that the parents needed to be more engaged with the daughter. And he didn't take my word too seriously, and 6 months later, the daughter was pregnant. You know, just those little small things that goes unnoticed, and sometimes the parents just disengage because somebody else is in there, where we can multiply our efforts by everybody being involved.
I think that's a great point, because parents obviously have a responsibility in there too, but they need help. And I know myself, when I was a teenager, there's only so much I'm going to listen to my parents. Having other people's perspective and other people that I look up to and respect, and being able to hear from them helped me then listen more to my parents.
Yes. Absolutely. And another thing I want to bring up is, you know, teenagers, like you know, just to build on what you were saying, teenagers look to others. They don't look to their parents because they resent their parents 95% of the time. I know I did, but that's just me. But, you know, they resent their parents because they don't want to be told what to do. And I think a lot of it comes down to is teens need mentors.
Right.
You know, it could be someone in their 20s, it could be someone in their 30s, 40s, whatever. If you get close to a teen, and I actually just went to a devotional on this topic last night at our church, that, you know, teens need mentors, you know, so that they are learning about the problems of sex, peer pressure, drugs, drinking, this, you know, everything that teens go through in high school, so that it doesn't become a problem for the parents later on.
Yeah, I think the parents present more of authority, and I think the mentor present more of a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit of a difference, because me growing up, I spent a lot of time at the YMCA, and I remember learning most of my growing up stuff, being a man. I understood how to be a leader and how to be a man for my dad, but at the same time, Terry Walker was able to give me the other perspective of life. He was able to be a friend that I can open up to, where I didn't feel that authority. I felt more relatability.
Who is Terry?
He's my, when I was 13 years old, playing 13 and under basketball.
Okay.
He was the coach, inner city basketball. So he was the coach the whole way through, all the way up until I was 18. taught me a lot of different things about, I mean, he made a great correlation between life and basketball. You know, how we play basketball, how we prepare for basketball, kind of how you got to prepare for life as well. You know, preparation is the key.
Well, and I've spent the last 8 years as a high school theater teacher when I was in Arizona, and so I can definitely relate to what you're saying because it's so important to invest in the students. You know, if I just brushed them off, and fortunately because I was teaching a different subject, I think it made me freer. It's a little bit more difficult if I was teaching a different subject area, but it allowed me a little more latitude in how I could come at things. And because I was involved with a lot of after-school programs, I had a lot of kids coming, you know, through my program over the years that I was there. But one other thing that you briefly mentioned that I think is super important is getting the parents involved.
Yeah.
And it's not just, you know, saying, hey, you need to talk to your kid, but in a lot of cases, they haven't had the proper training, because let's face it, no one, a perfect parent, you don't get the guidebook, you're at that. So I think in a lot of cases, it's, hey, nobody had this conversation with you. They don't know how to have it a lot of times, and so there's that fear on their part of, okay, even if they want to have that conversation with their kids that's difficult, they maybe don't have a starting place. So, you know, maybe your show and these ideas will help give them the tools and equip them to be able to have those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned that everything that you do outside of your home is first founded in your home. You know, the foundation of who you're going to be outside and how you deal with society will come from your parents. And a lot of times the parents are not educated.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see a lot of parents more trying to be an authority, like I mentioned earlier, versus trying to understand and draw out their kids. You know, but it's hard to do that when you have that responsibility as a parent.
Yeah.
Because you got to be a disciplinarian.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the same time, you want to be someone who's a director, but understanding the wear many different hats.
And it's a balancing act too, because you can't be only authoritative and you can't be only their friend, or at least in my experience. So you've got to, you said, have that balancing act of wearing those multiple hats.
Absolutely. Those are times when you spend just taking a walk with your son or taking a walk with your daughter. You know, giving those little conversation. I mean, it goes a long way. Those little seeds that you can plant. And somewhere down the line, somebody else will water it. Like in my case, where my father gave me the structure of how to be a man, but Terry Walker was able to water it. You know, he was able to take it to a different level. You know, he actually used basketball as an analogy to life, where I can learn and not feel threatened. Because sometimes, as a kid, you want to please your parents. And sometimes you go against the grain and even please your parents. And at the end, you may not be happy about that so much because you don't never find out who's your true identity.
That's a great
You
point.
know, you want to be like your dad. You know, I see a lot of parents trying to live through their kids, whether it's sports or something that they missed out on growing up. And that just create a whole different persona from the kid.
That's a great point. Yeah, there's so many different dynamics at play there that, you know, it sounds like the approach is the more knowledge that they can get, the better choices you can hopefully, because that's ultimately what it's about. It's, you know, you don't want to jam all this information into a kid and expect them to make always the right choices. They're going to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
But if you could give them the education that really rounds it out and helps them to make good decisions, then they've learned the process instead of just do this, don't do that.
Yeah, and mistakes are good. You can't grow unless you make mistakes.
True.
So what you got to do is you got to work yourself from the mistake and educate them the right way. You know, and ask them questions, a lot of questions, because a lot of times we spend a lot more time telling the kids versus asking questions to see where they're thinking and where they're at and what kind of feeling that they may have, because a lot of kids are insecure these days. You know, the
And you
kid
can
who goes out
definitely
and
know
fighting.
it, yeah.
Well, and I'm sorry if I...
No, I was just going to say, you can definitely tell a lot of kids are insecure because of this, of what the media, us excluded, of what the media shows how kids are supposed to be. You know, you have these celebrity females out there that are size 0, you know, starving themselves. That's not a natural way to live. You know, so these girls that are 13, 14 years old in that time of their life, I mean, even younger, 6, 7, 8 years old, you know, they're in that moldable time of their life, and they're looking at these people instead of their parents as role models.
Yeah.
You know, I'm reminded of, you know, a lot of kids carry, look up to role models. I mean, I remember me, I looked up to Hulk Hogan. He was my role model. But I like this quote, it came out from Charles Barkley, who said, "I'm not a role model." You know, and it's, you know, why do you think that celebrities try not to be role models? Is it because of, you know, the way they live? I mean, it wasn't until I read Hulk Hogan's second book, you know, earlier last year that I realized that he, you know, he sniffed coke a lot and he was a coke addict and all this stuff that I never knew about growing up. When he's spouting out, you know, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, you know, train, believe in yourself. Again, he was living a completely different life.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad how these celebrities live.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the media touts them as that's the way you're supposed to be.
When it's, you know, on their point, I would imagine it's a tough predicament too, because they're doing their job.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same token, people are looking to them for things that aren't related to their job, for advice or guidance or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not what they signed up for necessarily, but yet they're almost thrust in that role. So, yeah, interesting dynamic. And one thing that I initially thought your show was going to be a little bit, Rob, I thought you were going to have to serve as mediator, because some of those topics are difficult situations. But I like the approach that you're taking, because it really, to me, seems more about education.
Yeah,
You know, getting that out there. Does that sound accurate?
absolutely. But there's going to be some media in there as well. I study psychology, so I get a chance to get some input and kind of redirect or direct certain aspect of it. But I think having real life experience out there makes the difference to me.
All right, well, before we get to the next topic, because Rob's got a couple more shows we're going to talk about, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to keep this up. This interview is going great. So Rob will stay with us and we'll be back from break in just a